I was driving alone late at night in Maine, heading back home after spending the day visiting a friend who lived about 2 hours away. It was around 10 o'clock when I was making my way along one of those long stretches of highway that cut through the woods. The kind of road where the darkness feels heavier because the trees on both sides swallow the light from your headlights. I had music on low, just enough to keep me awake, but my focus was mostly on the blacktop in front of me. The road was quiet. No taillights in sight, no headlights in my mirrors. Just me, the hum of the tires, and that endless dark tunnel framed by pines. I remember thinking how strange the night felt. The air was still, the sky completely clear. It was cold enough that my breath fogged a little on the inside of the windshield when I yawned. Driving at night in Maine was something I had done before, but this particular stretch felt lonelier than most. I kept scanning the ditches and the edges of the trees, like I always did, because of deer. Anyone who's driven those back highways knows you don't mess around when it comes to deer leaping out in front of your car. My Saab was small, and hitting one would have destroyed both of us. I had seen deer freeze in headlights before, their eyes catching the beam, their bodies stiff and unsure if they should run. But what I was about to come across wasn't like that at all. I rounded a gradual curve, maybe going about 55, when my headlights fell on something that made me instinctively slam the brakes. At first, my brain didn't even register what it was. It looked too tall, too solid, too wrong for the middle of the road. My heart jumped into my throat, and then the shape turned into detail, and I realized exactly what I was looking at. It was a moose, not just crossing the road, not darting out of the trees, not even wandering along the shoulder. This thing was standing right there in the middle of the highway, calm, still, like it owned the asphalt. Its body was angled across both lanes, its legs spread out slightly, its giant head tilted down, and those dark eyes catching the glare of my lights. I had never seen an animal that big up close. Pictures don't prepare you. Videos don't prepare you. This thing was a monster, taller than the roof of my car, with legs like telephone poles and a massive chest that looked like a wall of fur. The antlers spread wide, catching the light in a way that made them look like branches from some dead tree. I swear it felt like looking at some ancient creature that didn't belong on Earth, let alone in front of my two-door Saab. I screamed without even thinking. Not a scared little noise, but a full-body, panicked yell that came out of me before my brain caught up. It wasn't just fear. It was disbelief, shock, the kind of raw sound you make when your body decides it's in danger and has no other way to react. My hands gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. There was no time to stop completely without risking sliding on the shoulder. So I jerked the wheel to the right and shot into the breakdown lane, the gravel popping under my tires. I was close enough to see the steam of the moose's breath hanging in the cold air. I could smell that musky, earthy animal smell as I flew past. For a second, I thought the side mirror would clip its leg, but somehow I missed it. The car rattled hard over the uneven edge of the road, but I held on and kept driving until the creature was in my rearview mirror, its hulking shadow fading into the distance. My whole body was shaking. I could feel my chest heaving, my throat raw from the scream. I slowed down, pulled back into the lane, and forced myself to take deep breaths. But my eyes kept darting back and forth, expecting another one to step out. My brain kept replaying the image of that massive dark body calmly standing there like it was no big deal, like it had decided the highway was its place for the night. I couldn't understand it. Deer panic. They freeze, they spook, they bolt into your bumper without even realizing what's happening. But this moose hadn't cared. It wasn't frozen in fear. It wasn't running. It was just hanging out, dead calm, like it was daring anyone to challenge it. Something about that unsettled me more than if it had charged. It was too casual, too at home in the middle of a strip of pavement made for cars, not animals. I drove the rest of the way on edge, hands clamped to the wheel, eyes glued to every shadow on the shoulder. My heart rate didn't slow for miles. Even when the forest opened up in places and the moonlight spilled across clearings, I kept expecting another towering silhouette to appear in the road ahead. My headlights only went so far, and beyond that, the blackness felt endless, like anything could be standing just out of sight. By the time I finally reached the turnoff to my place, My body was exhausted from the adrenaline. I pulled into the driveway, shut off the car, and just sat there for a minute in the silence, the ticking of the cooling engine loud in the stillness. My hands were stiff, my throat hurt, and my chest still felt tight. It was only then, sitting in the safety of my own driveway, that the reality of how close that had been really sank in. If I had been going faster, if my reaction had been a second slower, if that moose had shifted just a step forward into my lane, it would have been over. A collision with something that big in a car as small as mine wouldn't have been survivable. I thought about how easy it would have been for nobody to know what happened. 1 second of bad luck on a dark main highway, and I could have been crushed under 1,000 pounds of animal. My car crumpled, my body trapped. The road had been empty. No one was around. It would have been hours before anyone even found me. That thought stuck with me longer than the sight of the moose itself. The reminder of how fragile you are when you're out there, alone on those dark stretches of highway, surrounded by wilderness that doesn't care if you make it home or not. I'll never forget the size of that thing, the calm in the way it stood there, the way my scream ripped out of me without warning. I'd seen deer plenty of times, seen them scatter or freeze, but this was something else. This was a wall of living muscle and bone, unbothered by me, unbothered by the machine barreling toward it. I don't think I'll ever drive those roads at night again without picturing it. Its shadow, its breath, its impossible size. That night taught me something about driving in the dark out there. You're not in control. You think you are, sitting behind the wheel with the road laid out in front of you, but you're not. Out there, the animals, the wilderness, the sheer unpredictability of it all, they're in charge. And if you're lucky, you see them in time. If you're lucky, you live to scream about it. I had something creepy happen to me a few months ago that I still think about when I drive at night. It was one of those moments that seemed harmless at first but quickly turned into something I can't shake. No matter how much I try to tell myself it was probably nothing. It was late, close to midnight. I had just left town after seeing a play with a friend of mine. The drive back home was a good half hour through rural back roads, the kind of roads where once you leave the edges of town, you don't see another house, another light, or even another car for miles. Just trees pressing in on both sides, the road winding like a black ribbon through the woods. No street lamps, no shoulders in some spots, just darkness that feels heavier than anything else you ever experience. I remember being a little tired but not exhausted. My car's headlights stretched ahead, catching the reflective paint of the yellow lines, bouncing faintly off the trunks of trees. The hum of the tires against the pavement was steady and almost hypnotic. I was thinking about the play, the drive itself, not much else. About halfway home, I came up on a bridge that cuts across a wide stretch of river. The bridge is long and straight, one of the only clear open sections of that drive. As I approached it, I noticed a pair of red taillights glowing faintly on the right-hand side. A car was pulled over, engine running, headlights still on. At first, I didn't think much of it. That spot wasn't unusual for cars to stop. People pulled over there to check their phones, make a call, or sometimes just to stretch. Even though it was late, I didn't feel alarmed. I passed by at my normal speed, glancing once as I went past. The car was dark-colored, maybe black or deep blue, hard to tell in the night. A few seconds later, as I cleared the bridge and started back into the wooded section of road, I checked my rearview mirror. That same car was now pulling out, headlights bright, merging back onto the road behind me. Again, I didn't feel too bothered. Cars come and go, and it wasn't like I owned the road. But then it started tailgating me. Not just following, but pressing close. Closer than anyone should on that kind of road. The highway twisted back and forth through curves, and it was known as a hotspot for deer. Anyone who lived out there knew better than to ride close at night. If I braked suddenly for a deer, that car would plow straight into me. The fact that they stayed glued to my bumper anyway made my stomach tighten. First, I just felt irritated, a mix of frustration and confusion. Why would anyone drive like that? There was no reason to be in such a rush on an empty road. But the longer it went on, the more that irritation turned into something heavier. Paranoia. My grip on the wheel tightened. My eyes kept flicking between the road ahead and the bright glare of their headlights filling my mirrors. Then it happened, the part that still makes my skin crawl. Without warning, their headlights shut off. 1 second, my mirrors were flooded with light. The next, nothing, just blackness. I knew the car was still there because I hadn't heard it turn off or fall back. The engine noise was faint but present. But seeing nothing behind me, on a road surrounded completely by forest, was terrifying. My chest tightened. My pulse jumped so hard I could feel it in my throat. I had no idea what the driver was doing or why. All I knew was that someone was still right on me, following me through the dark, but now hidden, like they wanted me to feel it rather than see it. I pressed the gas harder, wanting to put distance between us, but the car matched me. Then, after a few seconds of silence, its headlights snapped back on, blinding in the mirrors, the front bumper still inches from mine. Before I could react, the car accelerated, swung out into the opposite lane, and roared past me. My heart lifted for a split second, thinking it was finally over, but then they slammed their brakes. Hard. The car came to a near standstill right in front of me. I was forced to hit my own brakes, my seatbelt tightening as the car lurched forward. For a moment, I just sat there in shock, staring at the back of that vehicle sitting almost motionless on the road. Panic took over. My hands trembled on the wheel, my breathing loud inside the car. I couldn't sit there waiting to see what they were going to do. I pressed the gas, swerved hard around them, and shot past into the opposite lane. My tires whined against the asphalt as I pushed the speed far higher than I should have. Curves or no curves, my only thought was getting home. Every shadow from the trees looked like it was moving. Every bend in the road felt like another trap where they might be waiting. I couldn't stop checking my mirrors, convinced I'd see their headlights again, convinced they'd chase me all the way home. When I finally turned into my driveway, I didn't even look back. I killed the headlights, flung the door open, sprinted up to the house, and slammed the door behind me, locking it instantly. My heart was hammering so violently it hurt, and my legs felt weak under me. I stood there in the entryway for a long time, listening, waiting to hear the sound of a car rolling up outside. But nothing came. No headlights through the trees. No engine in the distance. Just silence. That silence was almost worse. It left me wondering who it was, what they wanted, why they had singled me out on that road. Maybe it was just someone messing around. Maybe it was something darker. I'll never know. The next day, I went outside and looked up and down the road before I pulled out of the driveway. My nerves still felt raw, and every car I saw made me tense up. But the black or blue vehicle I'd seen wasn't anywhere. It was like they had disappeared into the night the moment I outran them. The memory stuck, though. I replayed it again and again. The headlights cutting off while they were inches behind me. The brake lights burning bright when they slowed down in front of me. That moment where I thought I was trapped between them and the forest pressing close on both sides. Now, every time I drive home late, I feel it again. The isolation of those empty roads. The weight of the darkness when you know there's no one else around. The realization that all it takes is one person with bad intentions and the right timing to turn an ordinary drive into something you never forget. And that's the worst part, knowing that what happened wasn't some ghost story or trick of the night. It was real. It was deliberate. Someone chose to do that. And the only reason I'm here to even think about it is because I made the choice to speed past, to get away before I found out what their real plan was. I was driving late one night, long after most people had gone to bed. The highway stretched out ahead of me in a thin gray ribbon, lit only by the pale wash of my headlights. The clock on the dash said it was past 11. And I still had more than an hour to go before I'd be home. The road was one of those back highways in the northern part of the state, where towns are spread thin and the woods feel endless. It's the kind of road where you don't see many other cars, and when you do, it's a rare flash of headlights that pass and vanish just as quickly, leaving you alone again in the dark. I was tired but alert, the kind of tired where your body aches but your mind stays sharp because you know you have to be. My car wasn't much. A small sedan, nothing fancy, nothing with weight or power behind it, just a car that got me where I needed to go. On roads like that, though, I always felt how light it was, how flimsy, how little stood between me and anything bigger that might decide to cross my path. I thought about that as I drove, scanning the edges of the trees. Out there, it isn't other drivers you worry about. It's the animals. Deer, coyotes, moose. I'd seen what happens when cars meet them. People like to think they're safe because they're behind a wheel, but the truth is different. Animals don't care about your plans or your safety. They move when they want, how they want, and unless you're driving a big car, your car will lose. Every time. The first time I saw the shadow on the road, I thought I was imagining it. A trick of my headlights, maybe, or a branch swaying in the wind. But then the beams caught the shape more fully, and my stomach flipped. Something was on the highway. I eased my foot off the gas, trying not to panic. The dark shape grew larger in the light until I could see it clearly. A moose, standing broadside across the lanes like it had all the time in the world. Its chest was so high it felt like I was looking at a wall of muscle and fur. Its antlers spread wide, catching the headlights in a dull glow. I slammed the brakes, the car jolting forward, the seatbelt locking across my chest. The tires screamed against the pavement, and for a split second I thought I wasn't going to stop in time. My headlights washed over the animal fully now, and I realized just how massive it really was. Pictures don't prepare you. Words don't prepare you. It was taller than the roof of my car, heavier than I could comprehend. I pulled hard to the right, sliding into the breakdown lane, gravel spitting out from under the tires. My hands locked around the steering wheel, knuckles aching, and I let out a sound I barely recognized, half scream, half groan of pure fear. The moose didn't even move, didn't twitch, just stood there, its head angled slightly, its eyes reflecting two dull points of light. My car came to a stop just past it, angled on the shoulder. I sat there shaking, breathing hard, staring into my rearview mirror where the animal loomed in the red glow of my taillights. It hadn't budged an inch. I knew one thing for certain. If I had hit it, that would have been the end of me. A collision with something that size in a small sedan isn't a fair fight. The hood would take out the legs, and the full weight of the body would crash through the windshield, crushing everything inside. It happens all the time up north. People don't walk away from it. And unless you're driving a big car, something heavy, something built to take the impact, your car will lose. Always. I sat there longer than I realized, the engine idling, my hands trembling on the wheel. My chest felt tight, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Every part of me screamed to just drive, to get away. But I couldn't stop staring at the silhouette in my mirrors. I was terrified that if I pulled forward, another one might step out ahead of me. When I finally pressed the gas again, the car rolled forward slowly, my eyes glued to the stretch of road illuminated by the beams. Every shadow looked suspicious, every dark shape a potential animal waiting to step out. The moose in my mirror grew smaller until the trees swallowed it, but the feeling it left behind didn't fade. The drive after that was agony. My body was stiff, my hands cramped from gripping the wheel too hard, my back aching from how tense I was. I kept my speed down, crawling at 45 even though the limit was higher, because I couldn't shake the image of that massive body standing still in the middle of the road like it had been planted there. The woods felt endless. My lights could only reach so far, and beyond them was just blackness. Anything could have been standing there, waiting. The thought dug in deeper the longer I drove. I pictured more moose, heavier and more stubborn, stepping out without care. I pictured deer frozen in panic, darting across at the last second. Every scenario played through my mind, everyone ending with me crushed, my car mangled, alone in the middle of nowhere. When I finally saw the glow of my town's lights in the distance, it felt like the biggest relief I'd ever experienced. I pulled into my driveway, shut off the car, and just sat there in silence, the ticking of the cooling engine echoing in the still night air. My body was shaking, my shirt damp with sweat, my throat dry. That drive left me with a truth I'll never forget. People think cars make them powerful, like the road belongs to them. But out there at night, surrounded by woods, that's just an illusion. The road doesn't belong to you. It belongs to whatever's big enough, stubborn enough, and dumb enough to stand in your way. And if you're not in something heavy, something with the size and strength to hold its ground, then you'd better hope you're lucky. Because unless you're driving a big car, your car will lose. I was driving late one night, cutting across a stretch of rural highway that was nothing but blacktop, faded yellow lines, and walls of trees pressing in on both sides. It was one of those drives where you start out tired but figure you'll be fine if you just keep moving, if you just get through the dark hours until you finally reach home. I had been on the road for hours, the kind of trip where the hum of the tires starts to blend with the steady drone of the engine, and the monotony of it lulls you into a strange, restless state. It was well after 10, maybe closer to 11. The air outside was cold enough that the windows fogged if I didn't keep the vents going. My headlights stretched far out ahead, catching little more than the dull glint of road signs and the pale trunks of birch trees. The deeper I got into that drive, the more I realized how alone I was. No taillights up ahead, no headlights behind me, just me in the middle of miles and miles of dark road. I was making a point to scan the edges of the woods. I knew the stories, the warnings people gave about animals at night, especially out there where the woods felt endless. Deer, raccoons, stray dogs, they could dart out at any moment. But there was something else I knew could be out there too. Something bigger, something that didn't just run from the lights. Moose. People had told me about them, how they're some of the dumbest, most stubborn animals you'll ever come across. How they don't flinch, don't care. How they just plant themselves wherever they want like they're daring you to challenge them. I didn't take those warnings as seriously as I should have. Not until I came around a long bend, my high beams stretching as far as they could, and the shape of something massive appeared directly ahead in the road. At first, it didn't register. My brain couldn't process it quick enough. It wasn't moving, wasn't running, wasn't even turning its head. It was just there, and then it clicked. A moose. It stood tall and solid right in the middle of the two lanes, its long legs braced, its chest broad enough that it blocked both my beams, throwing off heavy shadows on the pavement. Its fur caught the light in uneven patches, and its antlers spread wide like twisted branches, catching the glow with a pale, almost bone-like sheen. It didn't twitch. It didn't tense. It didn't make the slightest move to get out of the way. It just stood there like the road was its personal ground. My stomach dropped. I gripped the wheel and slammed on the brakes hard, the tires squealing against the asphalt, the car pitching forward as I fought to keep control. My seatbelt locked against my chest. The sound of the rubber tearing across the road filled my ears, and all I could think was if I hit it, I'm dead. The car shuddered and slowed, but even after coming nearly to a stop, the moose didn't flinch. It didn't even flick an ear. It was like staring at a massive shadow that had no intention of moving. I could see the steam of its breath hanging in the air, illuminated in the beams like faint clouds. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like the steering wheel was vibrating from inside my chest. I tried to edge the car slightly to the right, tires crunching toward the breakdown lane. But the animal shifted its stance. Not fast, not aggressive, just the stubborn, deliberate move like it was claiming more of the road. It wasn't spooked by my headlights, my engine, or the screech of the tires. It just stood there, heavier than the silence, like I wasn't even there. My throat felt tight. The sheer size of it was overwhelming. A full-grown moose can weigh over 1,000 pounds, and from where I was sitting in my little car, it looked more like a moving wall than anything else. The top of its back came higher than my roof, and those antlers stretched out wide enough that swerving the wrong way would have put one straight through my windshield. I sat there, idling in the breakdown lane, hands gripping the wheel so hard they cramped. Time stretched out in those moments. Seconds felt longer than minutes. I couldn't take my eyes off it, half expecting it to lunge, half expecting it to just collapse on top of my car with the same casual stubbornness it stood with. The longer I stared, the more wrong it felt. This massive animal perfectly calm in the middle of a road meant for machines flying 70 miles an hour. I thought about gunning the engine, about trying to scare it off, but I knew better. Moose don't scare easy. They're unpredictable. People hit them all the time in Maine, and the stories don't end well. Unlike deer, a moose's body sits so high on those long legs that if you hit one, the hood takes out the legs and the whole body comes through your windshield. I pictured it in my mind, that 1,000 pounds of solid weight crashing through glass and crushing me in an instant. It made me sick to even imagine it. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for my hands to ache. Long enough to feel the numbness creeping in from my legs being locked tight against the pedals. And still, the moose didn't move. Not forward, not back. Just standing. Stubborn. Finally, without warning, it shifted. Not quickly. Not even reluctantly. It just angled its head slightly, turned one massive leg, and started a slow, dragging walk toward the shoulder on the opposite side of the road. Each step looked like it took effort, heavy and deliberate, but it was steady. It crossed one lane, then another, and finally, after what felt like an eternity, it moved into the shadows of the trees and disappeared. I didn't breathe until the last flick of its antlers was gone from sight. Even then, I sat frozen for a few seconds longer, staring at the place it had been, waiting to see if it would change its mind and lumber back out again. The road ahead was empty, the highway stretching dark and silent. When I finally pressed the gas, my legs were shaky, my foot unsteady. The car rolled forward, picking up speed slowly, and I realized I was gripping the wheel so hard that my palms were slick with sweat. My throat was dry, my chest tight. Every shadow from the trees felt heavier now. Every curve of the road looked like it was hiding another massive body just waiting to step out. The rest of the drive was agony. I couldn't relax, couldn't let my eyes drift for a second. My nerves were raw, my muscles sore from how tense I was. And the worst part was the realization that it wasn't over. Just because one moose had walked off didn't mean there weren't more. The woods were full of them. The road belonged to them more than it belonged to me. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my body felt drained, like I'd run miles instead of sitting in a car. I shut off the engine and just sat there in the dark, the ticking of the cooling hood the only sound. My mind replayed the sight of that towering body standing motionless on the road, unbothered, unafraid, stubborn as stone. That night made me realize something simple and terrifying. Driving at night isn't about your skill behind the wheel. It isn't about staying awake or following the rules. It's about luck. Luck that the animal on the road sees you. Luck that it decides to move. Because out there, in the dark stretches of highway surrounded by woods, it doesn't matter that you're the one in the car. You're not in control. Not really. And if the animal you meet happens to be a moose, one of the dumbest, most stubborn creatures you'll ever face, then all you can do is hope you live to tell the story. I had one of the most unnerving experiences of my life on a late-night drive a few months back, and even now I can remember every little detail of it. It wasn't just a regular moment of being startled or annoyed on the road. It left me shaken in a way that stuck with me for days afterward. And honestly, I still think about it sometimes when I'm out driving at night, especially on empty back roads. That night, I was heading home after seeing a play with a friend. It must have been around 11:30 p.m., maybe a little closer to midnight. I live in rural America, so once you're a few miles outside of town, there are no street lamps, no houses, nothing but the beams of your headlights carving through the blackness. The only sounds are your tires rolling over the pavement and whatever noises filter in from the woods. It's a kind of darkness that feels heavy, like it presses down on you. I had taken this road countless times, so I wasn't worried. But when you're out there alone, you're always a little more aware of your surroundings, maybe more than you want to be. The road has stretches where forest lines both sides, branches leaning over as if they're trying to swallow up the pavement. You get these long, curvy sections where deer sometimes dart across without warning. That's always been the main concern, hitting a deer at full speed. I was about 10 minutes from home when I came to a bridge. I saw headlights ahead, off on the shoulder of the road. There was a car parked there, engine running. It wasn't unusual because that spot was a common pull-off. People would stop to text, make calls, or just rest before finishing their drive. But seeing a car sitting there with its lights on in the middle of the night, it gave me a little prickle in the back of my neck. Still, I didn't think much of it. I just eased past, keeping my eyes forward. But in my rearview mirror, I noticed movement. The car pulled out almost as soon as I went by. I told myself it didn't mean anything. It's a public road. They could have just been waiting for traffic to clear before getting back on. For a minute or two, I tried not to look back, but then I noticed their headlights growing closer, a little too close. Within a short time, they were right up on my bumper, bright lights filling the inside of my car. It's not that tailgating is unheard of, but on a road like that, dark, winding, with deer everywhere, it felt wrong. People usually give extra space out there, because you never know when you'll have to slam the brakes. But this car was riding me like they wanted to push me faster. I felt frustration first, then confusion, and underneath it all, a strange kind of paranoia. I say strange because I usually don't get worked up like that when driving, but something about the way they hugged my back bumper felt deliberate. It wasn't just careless driving. It was personal, like they were trying to see how I'd react. I thought maybe if I slowed down a little, they'd back off, but the second I eased up, they matched my speed. They kept themselves right there, uncomfortably close. Then, just as I was nearing the end of a stretch of road that was completely boxed in by forest, their headlights went out. The sight of that, the car still behind me, but now swallowed by total black, hit me like a cold wave. My stomach dropped. My skin prickled. I didn't even realize how tightly I was gripping the wheel until later. The only light came from my own headlights cutting into the woods, and I knew there was a vehicle back there but couldn't see it. For a moment, I thought maybe their lights had malfunctioned. But no, the timing was too deliberate. They had chosen that spot, the darkest stretch of the road, to kill their lights. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them. I could sense the shape of the car still tailing me, like a shadow just beyond reach. Every hair on my body was standing on end. Then they sped up. I could hear the engine even over my own. They swung out and past me, lights still off until they were ahead of me. When they cut back into my lane, their headlights suddenly came back on, glaring through my windshield. Instead of speeding off, they slowed until they were barely crawling, forcing me to brake hard. We were both out there in the middle of nowhere, boxed in by trees, no houses, no passing cars, no way to call for help. That was the moment real fear set in. I wasn't just annoyed or uneasy anymore. I was afraid. They wanted me stuck there behind them, boxed in. Something in me snapped, and I decided I wasn't going to sit there waiting to see what they'd do next. I gripped the wheel and floored the gas, swerving into the opposite lane to pass them. The whole time my heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear my engine. I kept waiting for them to try and cut me off or worse, but by some miracle, I made it around them. Once I was ahead, I didn't let up. I pushed my car harder than I ever had on those roads, taking the curves faster than I should have, eyes flicking constantly between the road and the mirror. I half expected to see their headlights come back, racing up behind me, but they didn't. The stretch of road behind me stayed empty, black and silent. I didn't stop until I got to my house. I pulled into the driveway fast, killed the lights, and bolted inside. I remember the rush of locking the door, double-checking it, peering through the blinds to see if anything had followed. But there was nothing. No headlights. No sound of another engine. The rest of the night, I couldn't calm down. My hands kept shaking even after I sat down in the dark of my living room. Every noise outside made me flinch. I replayed it in my head, wondering what the point of it was. Were they trying to scare me? Were they drunk? Was it some sick game? I'll never know, but what I do know is that it felt intentional. It wasn't random. And here's the part that stuck with me the most. Paranoia wasn't strange at all. It was the right reaction. Anyone would have felt it in that situation, because whoever was behind the wheel of that car wasn't just careless or impatient. They wanted to mess with me, to see me squirm. In the end, I got away. I made it home safe, but the road out there hasn't felt the same since. When I drive it at night now, I still glance at every pull-off, half expecting to see headlights waiting. And if I ever do, I know that tightness in my chest will come right back, just like it did that night.